In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to get rich using debt. So how do you use debt to acquire a whole bunch of assets which are cash flowing, and ultimately to build a group of companies or a group of assets which are cash flowing and become a big enterprise to then one day sell it to another group and making a bunch of money from that. So this is what I'm going to talk about. But before we do that, I want to tell you, since childhood, I was told two things about career. Do not go into business because it's risky, and do not take debt. No matter what happens, avoid taking a loan. Do not overextend yourself. Okay, debt is bad. People will drown in debts. This is the thinking that was there in my neighborhood, among my friends, among my friends' parents, among my family, in the school. You talk to each other, and I mean, any time a family is going through an issue financially, mostly it's around debt. And I realized that debt is not bad, but there are bad debts and good debts. Debt is very neutral because debt is just money, okay? And money in itself is not good or bad. It's how that money is raised and what is that money being used for. Okay, so what are the terms when you raise the money, and what is the purpose of that money? What are you buying from that money? Depending on what you buy from that money or that debt depends whether it's a bad debt or a good debt. And through media, through marketing, we are conditioned right from the school days to use debt to acquire liabilities. Okay, and liability is something that goes down in value and does not produce cash flow. Okay, I'll give some examples on this. And an asset is something that goes up in value and produces cash flow, positive cash flow. So the difference between good and bad debt simply depends on what you're buying, whether you're buying a liability or whether you're buying an asset. And here is a funny thing. A liability can be turned into an asset, and an asset can sometimes become a liability. And they can switch between asset and liability depending on who is in control. Who is in control of that asset? For one person, one item can be a liability, and if you just change the person, that same thing can be an asset. For example, Donald Trump, when he buys a plane, he's not acquiring liabilities. He can use that plane to get to places fast, and he can generate more business. It's good for his image. If his image is really high, then he can charge more prices, and eventually it makes him more money. Buying a plane can help him have tax benefits. So there are a lot of, it just simply depends who is the one in control. Okay. And similarly, there can be someone who is financially unsophisticated, and you give him a piece of real estate that's already producing cash flow, and that person can, the moment it's handed over to this person, it can become a liability. The tenant may run away, they may change some things, and everything falls apart, and it can become a liability. So that's the difference between asset and liability, and it's not something fixed that they can change. The nature of an entity or an object can change depending on who's using it and who's controlling it. Okay, so what I have seen in my life, in my family, there was a lot of bad debt. So debt was used to buy something that does not go up in value and it does not produce cash flow. So no wonder my family does not have a good relationship with debt. And when I was growing up, I had an extremely bad relationship with debt. And this is the reason when I started to build my company and I was working on millions of dollars in deals, I had a tremendous amount of fear. Tremendous amount of fear. I mean, fear that would make me vomit. Almost make me vomit. I remember I was in a $10 million bank presentation with my CFO, and I gave an incredible presentation. The CFO supported me, and the bankers were really supportive. They took us to a nice fine dine restaurant, and they said, yes, sure, we can give you 50% of the $10 million that you need. Things were going well, and somewhere deep down in my heart, in my gut, I felt, I don't need this. I don't need this. I don't want to be in this position. Like, I want to run away. I don't want debt. I don't want debt. But it's a very irrational fear, because really what I was doing was taking debt to acquire a cash flow producing asset. So the fear was something that was related to my childhood. And it was how my family related to debt, because they didn't know how to use debt, and because it's not taught in schools. We are used to using debt to buy liabilities, right? You have a student loan, $40,000, $50,000, $100,000, and you go, first you raise that money, okay? Then you pay to an institution that teaches you how to get a job. Okay, you spend 4-5 years learning how to get a job. And then you get a job, you use $40,000 to $80,000 for a cash flow of $2,000 to $5,000. That's a bad deal. If you spend $50,000 and you get a cash flow of $4,000 or $3,000 or $5,000 in exchange for giving that money, that is a bad deal. And not only that, it produces passive income, it is going to produce you this cash flow, but at the expense of your time. If you buy a real estate property, it kind of pays for itself, or a company that's run by the employees, you're not going to put in a lot of time running the show, in a real estate or a company scenario. But in a scenario where you're at a job, you paid $50,000 to generate a cash flow that's actually generated by you giving your time. So no wonder you feel drained, burnout, and it's a death spiral. And hence, people have a negative relationship with debt. I don't want debt. Not only that, once you get this cash flow, you start pumping up with more debt to buy liabilities like car. Car it doesn't produce cash flow. It makes you look good. TV. I mean, it's crazy. If you want to raise the money, that's fine. Debt can be good. You can buy something that's going to increase the value, your value in the marketplace, helps you make money, helps you create wealth. In that context, if you're using debt to multiply the money and you're acquiring a piece of information or some information product or something that's going to increase your income tremendously and make you rich, then it's a different thing. But if you go buy a car that's going to go down in value, or if you're going to pay to a college that's going to only help you get a job for a little cash flow, naturally over time, over generations, people are going to have a negative relationship to debt. So I just wanted to highlight this point before I move further and talk about how to get rich. Is the mental block is the first thing you will have to tackle, because very few people use debt to get rich, and hence you have very few people who are rich, because most people don't have a good relationship with debt. They want to avoid debt. I know, some of the companies that I met, small companies, and it's always the small companies, $1-2 million businesses that have this pride. We didn't use debt. We grew without using debt. I will never use debt. I've had meetings, they will sit and they say, we'll never use debt. And I thought, initially I thought it's a good thing, and now I know it's stupid. Because you have to know how to use it. Obviously, if you don't know how to use debt to increase, your wealth, then you should not do it. But if you know how to do it, then you should do it. So, so there is this attitude, there's a negative attitude towards debt. Because first, most people have debt that they have to pay off with their time. And most people have debt that they use to acquire something that goes down in value. If it's something that's going to make you rich, if it's something that's going to put money in your pocket, it's okay to have debt. I have used debt to go to Dan Penya's Castle seminar. And at a very young age, I have possessed this information that I am now using to get involved in these big deals and bring all of these people. So debt can be good in different contexts, debt can be bad. And I spent around $40,000. I could get a very nice car for that. But what am I going to do with the car in 10 years? Nothing. But after 10 years, but if I get this information to create wealth, I'm going to use it and put myself in powerful positions, which I have. So, how to use debt to create wealth? Simple answer, you gotta acquire assets. You gotta acquire assets. Asset is something that's producing cash flow. It's self-sustained, okay? It's run by other people, so it's self-sustained, kind of like a hospital, clinic, and it's producing good cash flow. The bigger the margin, the better. The lower the purchase price, the better. The lower the amount of debt you use to buy that asset, the better. So in what scenario will bank give you the money? The bank will give you money when you find an asset that actually should be worth $15 million, but you're getting it for 7 or 8. Okay, so it's a $15 million business, but you're paying 7 million as debt. That's a good deal. So high margin and discounted price, stable company, stable revenue, stable cash flows. That's the recipe for doing a good deal. Okay, so you got to use debt, you got to leverage debt always to buy something that's going to make you money. And it's best when you use debt to acquire something that's already creating cash flow by other people. So what are the types of assets you can buy? You could buy a company that's producing cash flow. You could buy real estate. Let's analyze these two. Okay. Companies in some specific sectors, for example, healthcare, have 20 to 40% profit margins in the service business. Healthcare has a subsector which has, clinics and doctors where people are being paid for their time. There is no product, there's no physical product that they're selling like a pharmacy would, but they are selling their time. Those are the best because time doesn't need any production, right? If there's somebody's giving time, then they're just giving their time. They're not producing something using materials. So the cost is low and the margin is very high. So you've got service-oriented businesses are very good because they have good margin. But the bottom line is you have to have big margin. So you have a business that's producing big margin cash flow. It's stable. The industry is stable and it's going up. Year on year it's going up. And you have many businesses that you can buy so that you have more leverage, you have more options, and you can find a deal that's good that you can buy at a lower price, okay? And you want to pay as little cash as possible up front. So structure a deal of a $10 million, but you pay 5 million and 5 million is over time. So your debt exposure is only 5 million, but you have an asset that's worth 10 million. So you pay little cash and then you pay over time based upon success of the business. So you can structure all kinds of deals where you limit the risk. So you're buying something that's big in size, producing cash flow, paying little money up front, and rest is structured based on successful metrics. So you can structure, I'm not going to go into that, but you can structure deals which are very well protected. In fact, you will be so comfortable that you would have accounted for all the scenarios, and then you will feel confident raising debt. Now you need to be advised by a financial professional, legal professional, okay? That's the disclaimer. And you need someone with an expertise in operations. So you use debt to take majority positions in companies, 60 to 70% of the company. So now you have company one, you acquired with cash flow positive, high margin, bought at a discounted price, and you have managed to negotiate that you're going to pay only a little bit money up front and rest will be stretched over time. That's asset number one. You do another deal, another deal, another deal, another deal. No money out of your pocket. And the good thing about debt is that you maintain control. If this money, this 5 million for a $10 million deal comes from an investor, they're going to want 50% of the deal or more. So you lose control. You only have 20-30%, and you have a very weaker position with the investor. But whether 5 million comes from an investor or a bank, it's still 5 million. A bank is not going to take an ownership in a business. You will still be the owner, and the bank may take some pledge over the shares, but the bank will give you the money and then they leave you alone. They don't create unnecessary problems in the operations for the most part. But the bank gives you the money, leaves you alone, because they are not using their money. It's the people who deposited that money in the bank, they're using that money. So they have a very less attachment to that. They want to make sure that they protect the risk, but then it's not their money. Investor is putting his money that he probably made using his time. So he's more attached to it. He would want to know everything in the operations. He want to put little money and get most of the equity, most of the shares in the company, and it's a little bit nasty with an investor. Not always, there are some good people also, but I'm just saying that it can get. So it's always good to use debt, but you got to be careful with debt, and it's always good to negotiate the price down. The lower the price, the less risky, and you got to make sure you don't pay all the money up front. Always pay a little bit, and little bit has to be based on success, based on performance. And if you do those are the kind of dynamics that go in a transaction when you're buying something, whether it's a real estate or a company. And that's how you get rich. It's just as simple as that. You keep ownership, you acquire good assets at a discounted price and high margin, and you buy several of them. Look, to do business, you need money. Okay, it's a fact. But that money doesn't have to be yours. So the moment you see, okay, to do business, I need money to acquire assets, to create a big company, it cannot be done just organically. Okay, it's very difficult. This is the reason why people are frozen when they want to start a business, is because to grow organically without any money, just by your brain, without any financial support, it's hard. It can be done. I'm not saying you cannot bootstrap your way to millions and hundreds of millions, but even people who did bootstrap their way to hundreds of millions used debt or investors' money someplace. Okay, so once you decide, okay, I will have to raise the money if I want to create a big company, you have two options: either to raise money from the bank or an investor. A bank is only going to give you money for a cash flow producing asset. It's not going to give you money to start a company from scratch. Okay. And when you raise the money from investor, you lose power, you lose control, and you have less shares in the company. But when you raise the money with the bank, you keep all the shares, and all you got to do is pay back the interest and the principal and make sure the business runs well and so on. So that's how to get rich using debt is you acquire assets. Asset can be a real estate, a company, anything that produces cash flow. Okay, so that's the recipe that many individuals use. Many rich people, that's how they do business. They always use debt. They're not scared of debt because they know the asset that they are buying will be able to pay back the loan without them putting in a lot of time, because the business is run by many people, not just themselves. So they have trust on the management team. They have structured the deal right. They have structured the purchase price right. They have held back some cash and they have given a little bit. And they are in an industry that is stable from macroeconomic downturns, any market crash, the industry is stable, industry is growing. You have many factors in control. You have experienced board advising you on transactions. You have removed all the risks. You have structured the deal right. You have made sure there are clauses protecting every scenario, and you will feel comfortable. You can sell the deal once you have done it right with your board members, with your advisors, financial, legal, operational. You've removed the risk, structured it right, bought at the right price. You can sell the deal with confidence to the bank. And now you've got to be responsible to make sure everything runs right. You will have people advising you how to do that. Okay, and you do it over several transactions. You have a great cash flow from it. You can hire the best people, and one day, once you've created a big company, you can sell and make a whole bunch of money. Okay, so that's the process that I wanted to leave you with. So if you're interested to learn this, get in touch with me and we'll see what can be worked out. I'll talk to you soon.